Hello and welcome back to the Three-Handed Bandits channel. It is Nathan and Aiden back with another video for you today. And today we're going to be giving you our updated power rankings after an interesting week 5 of NFL football. Aiden, what were some of your takeaways from this week?
This week was really interesting. Some teams that I was more pressed for them to win or expected them to win, they didn't. They underperformed. Obviously, like the Bills game, that was really kind of a disappointment for them. But a couple of them, I'm excited for these teams. Obviously, they're like the teams that I love and been pressing on all year, and they won this week. So I'm excited for their growth, basically.
For sure. And we're going to go ahead and get into the power rankings. But before we do, please go ahead and like and subscribe and let us know what you think of your team's rankings down below. And so we're going to start off at the bottom, the number 32 team, the Carolina Panthers. While I do feel good about the future outlook of this team with Bryce Young and a lot of this coaching staff, just year one, it is not going well. This offensive line has been horrible. Miles Sanders is one of the worst running backs in football. A 30-something-year-old Adam Thielen is their only competent receiving option. Like, this offense is just does not have the weapons to compete in the modern NFL. And while this defense did kind of have a hot start to the year, they've started to lose a couple pieces, and that defense is really starting to struggle. And in that game against the Lions, they just never were in that game. And so I do think we feel pretty comfortable about this being the worst team in the NFL. The next team, it's also going to be dropping one spot, is the Denver Broncos. There's something about these older coaches this year that are really starting to kind of just get picked on, Bill Belichick and the Patriots, Ron Rivera and the Commanders, and now Sean Payton called out Nathaniel Hackett and the Jets offense, who completely demolished them. This Broncos defense is horrible. The offense, is playing better than it was last year, but when this defense is so bad, it doesn't really matter. What have you seen from Sean Payton and the Broncos thus far?
Granted, Sean Payton was put into a sinking ship already, and he is trying to plug the holes. But with him calling out everything, I think just hurt him more. If he was just quiet about the organization, he came in, everyone would be viewing this a little differently. They'd be saying, "Oh, he's rebuilding, like he just started. Like, give him a year to get through everything, just like work out the kinks." That's what they'd be saying. But the problem with him basically just going out there and saying, like, just attacking everyone that was a part of this Broncos team or organization, it hurt him more in the light that he was shown. So, obviously the Broncos are not playing well at all. You said defense terrible, but I think the outlook on Sean Payton is going to be bad because he made himself look bad, basically.
And the next up, dropping a spot, the New York Giants. It's just, I still believe in Brian Daboll, and I think if this offense and team were entirely healthy, it would be a much different conversation. But this offensive line is not an NFL caliber offensive line. I don't think this offensive line could handle the SEC. Like, it's just, this offensive line is so bad. Losing Andrew Thomas, during the early part of the season, has really been hurting this team, and this entire offense really just is starting to fall apart. And then the defense is also just starting to get picked apart just because, they aren't, the back end of that defense is a little bit weaker. Pair that with an offense that's struggling. It's just everything that could go wrong is going wrong for this Giants team. I have a lot of respect for Brian Daboll. I think he did an excellent job last year. So I really hope they don't blow things up early and get rid of him. But at least this season, it's just it's going to be a rebuild year, just a little mini rebuild, and hopefully they can fix this offense heading into next year. But for now, I don't think it's going to get much prettier for a little bit. And then the next team, the Arizona Cardinals, are going to be dropping down 3 spots. They're going to be at the top of this kind of like top overall pick contenders tier. And I do think that they have played pretty tough and they've had a lot of energy. However, they're just lacking talent. And I think as we get further and further into the year, just that lack of talent is going to start showing even more. And so while I am kind of impressed by the job that they have been doing here, they just do not have the horses to continually compete and win games in this NFL landscape. And so next up in our tier of not necessarily like bad teams, but or not necessarily like the bottom, like cellar door teams, but like still teams that are bad. We're going to have the Washington Commanders dropping 3 spots. What did you see from them in their game against the Bears on Thursday Night Football?
I'm going to be honest. I had the Commanders in this game, and I was expecting them to be very good offensively with Sam Howell, but it's just defensively. Oh my gosh! Like we knew they were struggling, but oh my gosh, the Bears just destroyed them. Like there's nothing good about that I saw on this defensive side of the ball. I mean the Commanders' offense is still trying to work their kinks out. I mean, it's kind of weird when you have Logan Thomas, your best receiver right now, because they're not getting it to the other key pieces. He's playing the best offensively for this unit, which is kind of crazy to say. But yeah, that defense, man, I was expecting way more from them in this game, and the Bears tore them up.
Yeah, no, the Bears really embarrassed them. But like Ron Rivera, you're a defensive coach, and your defense isn't good. You're not being some great leader. You're not coaching a well-coached defense. I think someone came out and said that, or he came out and said at halftime, he didn't even give like a halftime like pep speech, like pep talk. Like he let the players do it. So like if players are trying to hype each other up, your defense is bad, and you're not setting a good example and being a good leader and having a well-coached team, why are you still fucking here, Ron Rivera? Why are you still a coach in the NFL? I think it's time for him to go. Um, they have a lot more talent, and they've shown a little bit more flashes than these teams down below them. That's kind of why they're in this tier of like bad teams, but not like horrible teams. But I don't think the Washington Commanders are going to have a fun rest of the year, especially when you look at the rest of their schedule. They have some absolutely brutal games up ahead. So that's why they're going to be dropping down 3 spots. And then rising 5 spots, the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields might have actually figured out how to play quarterback in the NFL. And he has all the athletic tools to be a great player. And he's finally seemingly putting stuff together. He's had 2 really bad weeks, 2 really good weeks, and 1 week that was kind of whatever. So who knows what he is going forward through the rest of the year. But at least for now, this team is playing with some energy. The offense is starting to look a lot better. The defense is starting to look a lot better. Like I think they're finally starting to put some pieces together. And I think we're going to start feeling a lot better about this Eberflus regime, which 2 weeks ago, it seemed like everything was about to explode. And then they've had 2 tough weeks of playing, hard football. And, I don't know if they're going to necessarily make the playoffs or anything crazy, but they're definitely going to be a much better team for the rest of the season. And the next up, the New England Patriots falling down 8 spots. The first couple of weeks, they were like a competitive team going against really good teams, had some tough, hard losses. But the last 2 weeks, it was been, I think, 2 of the biggest losses or the 2 biggest losses in Bill Belichick's career. Like, they are just starting to just lose it all. I do still think Bill Belichick is a good coach, but they need someone else in that front office to start making some personnel decisions, just because this offense does not have the talent to compete in the NFL. They don't have a whole bunch of bad players, but they don't have a whole lot of good players. Like if you're playing Madden, like everybody on this offense is like a 77 overall or something. Like it's just some of the most average players of all time. There's no like elite standouts or dynamism. And now this defense is really kind of starting to lose some pieces and get picked apart. And it's starting to go really, really bad for this Patriots team. And it's crazy to think that we could be in a realistic possibility where Bill Belichick could be the first NFL coach fired this season. Like it's that levels of scary that we're starting to get to where Bill Belichick could be on the hot seat. Bill fucking Belichick could be on the hot seat in 2023. Like it's a crazy year. Things need to turn around for the Patriots fast. Otherwise it's going to get even rougher for them. And next up, we got the Green Bay Packers dropping down 2 spots after a tough Monday night loss. What have you seen from the Packers last couple of games?
Realistically, in my mind, the Packers, they're in a good spot. Only because, as of right now, their team, they are not all healthy. So they're trying to stay in that hunt, and it's not working. So what they need to do is basically play tough football, but lose. It's like they'll lose close games, which they did, at least this week. So if they keep this up, they'll get a good draft capital for next year, and they'll be able to rebound, have a healthy team. Everyone coming back to start. I mean, you could see shines of it later this season of how they're going to look. But as of right now, like not having Bakhtiari, not having Aaron Jones, those are two, in my opinion, very key pieces of this offense. And then a little bit of Jordan Love needing to get a little more work in there. He's shown glimpses of really good talent. But then again, it goes to my question to these receiving core. I mean, you have Christian Watson and then a guy that I like in Romeo Doubs, but he got one catch last week. He got this week, one catch. And then last week he got 9. The inconsistency of who's getting the ball or like who he's trusting is kind of all over the place. And then with the defense as well, it's the same way all over the place. So there's some shines of like Kenny Clark getting sacks and then giving up big plays. So
Yeah, though they definitely need to move on from Joe Barry, who's doing a horrible job as one of these Vic Fangio disciples that are just not cutting it. So they have a lot of talent on the defensive unit that's just underperforming. But I think this team was doing a lot better. But once they started losing these offensive line pieces, the offense really started to struggle as they can't block anybody, and Jordan Love is not playing as well. And so that's going to hurt you. But I do still think that Jordan Love has been somewhat serviceable, but he has had a pretty poor kind of last, I guess, 2 games, maybe like 10-ish quarters. Like recently, he's not been playing quite as well. But I think he did have a good start to the year at least, but they do deserve to drop. And then 24, the Raiders are actually going to rise 4 spots after beating the Packers. I think they're mainly rising because other teams are kind of dropping down below them. This defense is still really, really poor, but Max Crosby is doing his best to carry them. I think if he was on a better team, he would be a legit shot to win Defensive Player of the Year. Like he's just been absolutely phenomenal in this game. He had 4 tackles for loss and a sack. Like he's just been dominating and trying to carry this team. And offensively, it hasn't been pretty, but somehow they've found a way to win a few games. And I think they're going to be a somewhat okay team that people aren't necessarily scared of going against. But they're not going to be like a pushover that everybody's just expecting a free win against. But they've definitely not been very, very good. And the next up, the 23 spot, rising 4 spots, and the start of a brand new tier of the any given Sunday, who knows what you're going to get from these teams tier, is Atlanta Falcons. What did you see from Desmond Ridder and the Falcons in their game against the Texans?
Desmond Ridder, I don't know what he drank before this game, but I think he had the Michael Jordan juice from the movie. So like I swear he went off. He looked very good, looked comfortable in the pocket, especially that last drive. That last drive to me was the staple of him, of what he can be. He was comfortable, making great throws, making great reads. He wasn't going for the huge play. He's just 5 yards, 10 yards. It's just enough to get you downfield, to put you in a spot to obviously win the game, which they did. So he looked very strong. And if this continues, they will be a team that could be scary. Because, I mean, in this game, in reality, I mean, Bijan had electric plays, but he wasn't as dominant as he was the first couple weeks when Desmond Ridder was doing so bad. So this week, they need to find out basically an even of how they can get Bijan the most touches and look the best with Desmond Ridder staying hot. It could be a team that could be scary.
Yeah, I will say, surprisingly, Kyle Pitts has one of his best games of his career, and Desmond Ridder, in turn, also has one of his best games of his career. It's kind of funny how when you use Kyle Pitts, good things happen in the passing offense, but Desmond Ridder is still not it, but at least, they're a team that's capable of at least having some good weeks, like against the Texans. And then 22, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers rising 2 spots after a tough divisional win. Wins like this is how Mike Tomlin always finds a way to have a 500 record. But this, like we do say, a lot of these teams are really matchup dependent. Like the Steelers might be the most matchup dependent team in the league because this offense is horrible. It's just not good at any facet. Kenny Pickett's been struggling. The offensive line is not great. Najee Harris looks like Trent Richardson. George Pickens has played well, but he's not been, the most productive just because everything around him hasn't been great. And then Jalen Warren's looked good, but they also don't really use him quite as much as they should. It's almost like a Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott situation the last couple of years in Dallas. But this defense is still really talented and is capable of winning games. That's kind of what happened against the Ravens is they were able to make enough timely, plays, get a couple turnovers just to find a way to squeak this game out. Overall, do I feel like this is going to be some dominant team? No, but they are capable of having really good defensive weeks to kind of squeak out victories somehow. But I definitely don't think they really need to be like a top 20 team. I do still think they're one of kind of the bottom 10-ish teams. I was just going to find a way to scrap out some tough victories. And the next up, the Minnesota Vikings dropping down 9 spots. They were really close and competitive against the Chiefs. I think the Minnesota Vikings, if you got every single legend in NFL history in their prime and put them on a team, the Vikings will find a way to have a one-score game against them. But also, if you recruited a Pee Wee football team of under 8s, they would also find a way to be in a one-score football game against them. Like, this Vikings team is capable of playing to their competition, whether it's playing down or playing up. But without Justin Jefferson, I'm worried about what this offense is going to look like. And so that's why they're dropping 9 spots, just because I think Justin Jefferson in his absence is really going to hurt this team, not necessarily because of anything else that they did in that game against the Chiefs. And next up, dropping down 1 spot, the Houston Texans. What did you see in their loss against the Falcons?
So against the Falcons, their play calling in my mind was the weirdest that I saw, or basically what was happening. But they would go first down, quick pass. It would be now 2nd and 7. You know what? 2nd and 2. Let's run the ball. 1 yard, and then it's 3rd and longish, and they're trying to make a play, and CJ Stroud usually trying to do something extra, and it's either farther or could be a little slant 7 route. No, they go for the 15-yard pass, miss it. And I just don't like the order they're doing stuff. I would prefer, let's say, if they're going to try the run game, try it earlier, first downs. And if it's not working, abandon it. Because that was like the thing that was hurting the most, causing these 3-and-out plays, is their run game was not sufficient to be able to keep up with their pass game. And it was kind of basically hurting the pass game as well. Because if you can't have one, or you can't have both, you can't have one, basically. So it's one of those things where, in my mind, they can be so good if they fix this run game. Because CJ Stroud, he's balling, obviously. Yes, Tank Dell went down, so that's a young piece that they're missing because he has a concussion. But still, that was, in my mind, what I saw that was hurting them the most offensively.
Yeah, no, CJ Stroud still definitely looked a lot better than expected. And I do think that this Texans team is definitely ahead of schedule on their rebuild. However, speaking, like, they're kind of just in this middle tier of teams. And, this week they lost a close one against a Falcons team who had a really good week. So I do think they'll still rebound and be a solid team, but definitely some things to fix for sure. And next up, the Indianapolis Colts rising 2 spots. Shane Steichen is legit. I think he's definitely kind of next up to be one of like the big coaches in the league. Like, I think maybe next year or 2 years from now, Shane Steichen will kind of be on the Mike McDaniel trajectory over on like Miami. This team is this offense is so well, like, the play calling and play design, everything's just done really, really excellently. I wish Anthony Richardson could keep himself healthy so we could really see what this team would look like with under like a bunch of plays of Anthony Richardson. But they've still played really, really well. And even with, Richardson going down and throwing Gardner Minshew in a complete different game plan, it was still like a well-constructed offense. Like, this team is just – Shane Steichen's legit. This offense is really good. And then this defense has also been really solid when DeForest Buckner's played. So, this team is really, really solid. I do still think that they need to, add some more talent, especially, in their main like playmakers, like some of their corners or secondary on their receivers. They still do need some better talent. But for the most part, outside of that, like this team, you're starting to feel good about the quarterback and coaching. When last year, that was what really kind of exploded everything. So stock is definitely up for the Colts. They still do have a little bit of ways to go, but I do think that at least every week they're going to be competitive and in every game that they play. And so next up, we got the LA Rams rising 2 spots even after a tough loss against the Eagles. What have you seen from the Rams, especially last week and so far this season?
Well, they just added a huge key piece for him. Obviously, Cooper Kupp's coming back, and that offense could be even better. And the offense didn't look too bad towards the beginning of the game, but what struggled for them the most is what we've been talking about all year is that defense. I mean, yes, Aaron Donald, but he's not. He can be a one man wrecking crew, but you can't do it every week. And that was the big thing in my mind is that the Eagles really took advantage of their poor defense. I mean, the Eagles defense played against their offense quite well, but still, I mean, the game ended 23-14. That's something that if you want to be competitive for the Rams, they got to play a little better defense so that offense can thrive.
Yeah, I do think this offense has been good at times, but the Rams are clearly not, the same threat that they've been under Sean McVay. But they've still been really good, and it was cool that they're able to get Puka and Cooper Kupp, both involved in the offense. But yeah, I do think they're a solid team, but not anything more than that. And the next up, we'll talk about, we'll say 17-16. We're villain together. The Jets and Titans, the last 2 teams in this kind of middle tier. They're going to be swapping spots. And we'll start with the Titans, who dropped down a spot. They were competitive against this Colts team that has been pretty solid. Ryan Tannehill didn't have a bad performance. But definitely he wasn't great. And so this team is kind of just got this weird kind of yo-yo effect of kind of going back and forth of, this team can be really good as long as the offense is at least average or, adequate to good. But then they have some weeks where they struggle a lot more and they lose games. So like we said the Steelers are, the most matchup dependent. The Titans kind of might be like right behind them as really, really matchup dependent. But they're still a really solid team. They still do have talent, and this defense is capable of really winning games. It's just unfortunately this offense just didn't quite do enough this week. But they're definitely still a team that I don't necessarily want to go against. I don't really want to go against Mike fucking Vrabel and whatever he's going to scheme up. But overall, Titans team, I think, deserves to drop down a spot, but I still do think they are a solid team. And as you said, the Jets rose a spot. Zach Wilson's looked pretty good. I still think he has some ways to go before we feel good about him being, a starter. But he's starting to play a lot better. This offense is really starting to get things figured out. And this is still one of the better defenses in the league. So I do think they have a recipe to at least be a contending team. They don't quite have the same venom that they would have had with Aaron Rodgers. But if Zach Wilson is able to figure things out, then there is no reason that this team can't be really, really solid and at least make the playoffs. But defense is looking great. They got Breece Hall going. Breece Hall is dynamic running back. So, like, there's a lot to be excited here, as long as Zach Wilson can just keep getting better and playing well. And so our next tier we're going to have right here, starting off with our 15 teams, only a couple of teams. They're like not necessarily like playoff kind of locks, but they're all like kind of solid, good teams. Like they're not really, I think, threatening to be a Super Bowl team, but they're not really threatening to like miss out on the playoffs and like really flame out. And so we're going to start off with the New Orleans Saints rising 7 spots. Obviously, you're a Saints fan. What has your Saints team really been showing you this year?
Well, this year, especially, is that the defense. That defense is going to help them win games no matter what. I mean, their offense can be adequate and they can win the game. It just really depends on them. If the defense shows up, which they have been, they have a lot of young talent coming in, especially on the cornerback room for them. If everyone's healthy and comes back, bro, it's a scary defensive game. I mean, yes, Mac Jones played very bad, so that 2 interceptions, but man, this Saints defense played very, very great. I mean, they got it was a pick 6 this past game. They put 0 points on for the Patriots. They went in and did what they do best, and basically punch the Patriots in the mouth. And as the offensive side comes, it wasn't any mistakes, but it wasn't anything crazy good. Derek Carr still, I mean, he only had 183 yards. I would like to see him throw a lot more. They were doing a lot more run game in this game, and it was doing well for the most part. The scary one for me still is going to be Derek Carr and whether or not he can really step up to what the Saints want him to be is the real big question. Because I mean, he went what 18 for 26 for 183 yards. Yeah, it's not terrible, but like I want him to do more with what this offense can give him.
I do agree. Derek Carr has been just this game. They were up so early that's kind of why I think played well. I just want to push back on you a little bit. He did play well. Definitely his best complete game thus far this season, but this defense was so elite against the Patriots that he didn't really have to do much because they were up 21-0 at halftime and not really threatened. I do think it was probably Derek Carr's best game as a Saint yet because, against Green Bay, he played a really excellent first half, got injured, and then when he came back last week, just looked timid and scared, but he definitely looked a lot more comfortable. So if you get this version of a much more comfortable Derek Carr, this team's going to be really scary because this defense has been pretty solid this year. But if you get the version like you got last week, then this team could definitely struggle. But if Derek Carr gives you, the 16th to 10th best quarterback play in the league, then you're going to have a solid team. We still do have the Buccaneers ranked kind of just above them, but the Saints team, it's a two-horse race for the Buccaneers and Saints on who's going to end up winning the NFC South for sure. And then next up, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars not moving. Even in this game against the Bills, they were not super impressive. They really jumped out to an early lead because, I think they were more well-adjusted to, the London and the time zone difference because, Buffalo didn't fly out till Friday. So they really kind of that difference in the adjustment really, really showed for the Jaguars in this game. But then once Buffalo kind of got further into the game, Jacksonville didn't really do anything for a while until they kind of got a couple of late scores to kind of put the game to rest. But this offense to me has been underwhelming. They're still having issues with drops. I think Trevor Lawrence has played, decent, but not, I don't think he's some elite quarterback or anything. And this defense did have their best game, but I still just don't necessarily trust it. They ran into kind of a bad Josh Allen game, and, it was the whole, time zone difference thing too. But I think if Matt Milano stayed healthy and didn't get injured in this game, the Jaguars would have lost. But overall, they were able to win this game. To me, it was just a trap game for the Bills, who got kind of just unlucky scheduling, but I do think that the Jaguars being 14 is right. And then number 13, the other team, the NFC South, as we mentioned, the Buccaneers not moving. They were on bye week. Not really a whole lot to talk about. And so next up, number 12, the Cleveland Browns. I wanted to rank them a little bit higher, so we kind of adjusted that. They were also on bye week, and the Vikings really dropped, so not really much to talk about there. And now in our next tier, we're going to have kind of decent playoff threats, but not necessarily Super Bowl threats. But true playoff contenders. Number 11, they're going to be dropping down a spot just because somebody else rised over them, but the LA Chargers, who are on bye, just dropping down a spot because someone rised above them. And number 10, the Seattle Seahawks, also dropping down a spot just because someone else was above them. But we had 4 teams in a row that were on bye week, so we don't have to talk about much of those teams. We'll kind of be able to talk about them more into next week. But number 9, dropping down 2 spots, the Dallas Cowboys. We both dislike Mike McCarthy. He is not a good coach. They got completely outclassed and embarrassed by this 49ers team. This roster has so much talent, but they are weakest in the 2 most important spots: coaching, at least offensive coaching, and quarterback play. Dak Prescott. Imagine how good this team would be if they had Tua and Mike McDaniel, or if they had Geno Smith or Ben Johnson from the Lions. Imagine how good this team could be if they didn't have Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is not a top 10 quarterback. He's barely a top 16 quarterback. And this offense just is not good enough under Mike McCarthy. And so I do think that this defense is going to do a good job beating up on some of these bad teams and really, helping carry this team, deep into at least into the playoffs. But I don't trust this team to win 4 straight playoff games to end up winning a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no way they're going to be able to do that. Because at this rate, they're not getting a first round bye because I think the 49ers are clearly going to end up being the 1 seed. So there's no way they're going to be able to win games on the road to make the Super Bowl. But they still have so much talent and are really going to be able to beat up on some bad teams. But God, Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott are not cutting it. And they got absolutely embarrassed on Sunday night. But we do have rising 3 spots. The Cincinnati Bengals might be back. What did you see from the Bengals in their win against the Cardinals?
The biggest thing is, I'm going to quote Jamar Chase, 7-11, baby. Always open is his little quote there. They looked very solid. I mean, defensively, they were able to stay well rested. So they were able to basically attack the Cardinals offense, because what they've been struggling with in the past weeks is that the offense would have these 3-and-outs, 4-and-outs, 5-and-outs, and the defense would go back on the field, not getting enough rest, and they would get exposed. Basically, they have a good enough defense to make these plays when the offense is on the field for a good, generous amount of time. So this game was a game for them to win, and they did that. Obviously, Jamar Chase had a career game for him. 1, 2, he broke a record with catches. Was it 15 catches? That's nuts. I mean, yes, not having T. Higgins helped that, get him the more receptions, but like he said, he's always open, man, and he looked fabulous. Same with Joe Burrow. His leg looked way better. He was able to make those deep passes to Jamar Chase, which helps me out a little bit, comforting-wise for Joe Burrow, his progression this year. But I can't wait until they progress better.
But yeah, no, Joe Burrow definitely had his best game. I definitely think he's getting back to kind of a healthy stage. And I do think that, if we see another week or 2 of this, then they'll kind of go back into that Super Bowl tier. But I think they at least proved that they are most of the way back. But just need to give us another week of showing us that, and then we'll be able to move them all the way up. And then rising up a spot, the Detroit Lions. What have you seen from your boys in blue?
Right, they've been doing. They've been balling. All right, I'm loving it. All right. Obviously, I'm always going to talk about how I love that man Dan Campbell. He's really building a great organization around him, and these players love to play for him. They're always fired up. They're doing what they do best, and honestly, it's running the ball. Man, that offensive line is crazy, crazy good. I remember watching the game, and you many times that they panned and they started, the announcers started talking about Eric Decker and plays that he was making. Man, he was going crazy for them that game, and it was helping them out in the passing and the run game. When you have an offensive line at this caliber, it's going to help you offensively as a whole. And then, defensive wise, they were playing solid. I mean, the defensive wise, Panthers got that last touchdown. I don't really think the Lions were really caring about it, so I'm taking off that. They did their job, and it was to slow down and stop this weak Panthers offense. So there was no question about whether or not they should move up. So,
yeah, no, Aiden Hutchinson is definitely starting to. He's at least a tier 2 pass rusher, and he's getting close to being a tier 1 guy. Like, he's been great. And even without Amon-Ra or Jahmyr Gibbs or a whole lot of talent, this offense still produced. The only thing that is holding us back from putting the Lions in the true Super Bowl contenders tier is they still have yet to really play anybody. Like, they played the Chiefs week 1, but without Travis Kelce, it was week 1. It was a little bit of a fluky game. Let's be honest. I don't fully think they were the better team in that game. But outside of that, they haven't actually played anybody yet. So I'd want to see how they play against some of these top tier teams. I'd really want to see how the Lions face against the Niners or the Dolphins or the Eagles, some of these top teams, to see kind of how they would actually compete and if they would be a true Super Bowl threat. That's the only thing really limiting them from being in that tier. But even with no Amon-Ra and no Jahmyr Gibbs, they still put up 40 points. Sam Laporte has looked amazing. And Jared Goff might be a top 10 quarterback. And so all they need is to prove to us against a legit, top team that they are a top team. But Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, is it Patrick Graham or Aaron Glenn? I think it's Aaron Glenn. But I mean, they're doing a phenomenal job coaching here, and definitely the Lions could be a legit Super Bowl threat soon if they prove to us against a legit team. And the next up, we got the Ravens not moving a spot. The Ravens remind me so much of last year when they were like a really good team and they just kept finding the weirdest ways to blow games. I think last year at one point they were like 3-3 and they were been trailing for a total of like 60 seconds across all three of their losses, or across all six of their games at that point. Like, they were better team than the Steelers, and they just found a way to lose it for whatever dumb reason. But I still think this is a good team. Lamar Jackson's still like a top 8 quarterback. This defense is definitely capable of some really good games. This is just a weird Ravens shooting themselves in the foot again type of
all
game.
the drop passes. There was Zay Flowers drop touchdown catch. Mark Andrews first down catches were dropped. It was just that was hurting them the most, was the drops. And if they fix that, they win the game. No problem.
Yeah, it was so many bad drops. There was the interception on the goal line fade to Odell. It was just like they should have won this game. They found some weird, unlucky, just everything went wrong, like random fluky stuff that cost them to lose. But I definitely do still kind of think they are kind of at least the best in this tier until the Lions or Bengals kind of prove us otherwise. But they're still a really, really solid team. It just needs to kind of clean a couple of things up. But now we are in our top Super Bowl contenders tier. And we're going to start off with the Buffalo Bills dropping down a spot. We said in the pick video, this could be a little bit of a trap game. And it was. And they really kind of started to get back into it later into the game. And they were just a little bit too little too late. But this team still does have a lot of talent. Defensively, I'm a little bit worried. Obviously, they lost Tre'Davious White, didn't have him last week. And then Matt Milano could be out for some time. So I'm just a little bit worried about this defense. But Josh Allen has been really, really great and is definitely one of the top, handful of MVP candidates. Stephon Diggs has been balling as well. I know a bunch of people online found it really funny when Stephon Diggs was bitching on the sideline and then got mossed by a corner like 2 plays later or whatever it was. So, I mean, that's definitely a little bit of a funny thing, but this Bills team's still really, really good. I just do think that they're dropping down a spot because the other team rising above them is starting to kind of figure out some of their kinks. And so we have the Bills dropping down a spot, and the team that we have, taking their spot is the Philadelphia Eagles. Aiden, what did you see from the Eagles their game against the Rams?
They played, in my opinion, very, very well. The guy that stand out the most to me is Jason Kelce. This guy is the heart and soul of this offensive line. There was one play where the play clock went 0, but he still snapped the ball and he still pull blocked. And he was already on the defender. It was like, and he got visually frustrated. He was mad about, like, he knows the potential of this offense. And that one struggle play, and then right after that, bro, he made an incredible block for the runner to make. I think it was like a 15-yard run. It's just like shit like that on this team. It's just, they have a small inconvenience and they bounce back, and they're very, very good. I can't wait until they really get rolling even more. I mean, Devontae Smith wasn't even a huge factor in this game, and he's still a great receiver. That can be. This defense starting to wise up. The struggles that they had in the past weeks with that secondary started getting better. So they're making the ball roll and they're getting good.
Yeah, no, they're definitely one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. Brian Johnson, I do think, is getting more comfortable as a play caller. And so really there's not a whole lot holding this team back. I do definitely think, we have them the 4th ranked team. They're one of the best teams in the NFL for sure. However, our top 3 is going to remain unchanged. So start number 3, Miami. They've had 4 weeks of absolutely stellar offense. The one game against Buffalo was a little bit of a trap divisional game where they got their ass kicked. But 4 games, they've been really good. Even Tua didn't have his best game against the Giants, and they still won this game comfortably. So all they really need is to get this defense fully up to speed, get Jalen Ramsey back and just hope. And all you really need for this team is for Tua to just not make too many mistakes. Because he's, even in the games they've won, he's made a couple of mistakes. Just don't make too many. But I don't know how many other teams in the NFL can still win games comfortably with their quarterback making a bunch of mistakes. Like Tua might have one of the easier jobs in the NFL because even when he does mess up, Mike McDaniel will call up a play call, Tyreek Hill will be wide open, and it's an 80-yard touchdown. Like, this offense is just absolutely insane. They broke the record for most yards in the first 5 games of an NFL season. Like, this could be an all-time historic offense, and that's going to be scary when it comes to the playoffs going against this team. But they've been really, really exciting. However, we still just do have the Chiefs just above them. What have you seen from the Chiefs so far?
They doing what they do best, man. It's like, I'm gonna keep going with the word balling. This team is too good. I mean, Pat Mahomes, he is a great quarterback. I'm not gonna lie to you. If he continues this path of what he's doing, he could be one of the best ever. Like, he is just stellar at what he does, day in and day out. I mean, Travis Kelce, obviously, he is also awesome. And then the defense, they're above what everyone thinks they are. They are a solid defense, man. They can get the job done. They can make the stops, and they're not going to be flashy. They're not going to make touchdowns, but they're going to make the stops when they need to, and that's what they did. The only thing on the Chiefs that I'm going to keep going on, if they struggle at all, and it's going to be the wide receiver room. If they get a star wide receiver, in my opinion, dude, oh my gosh, they could be number one for sure. They could beat the 49ers if they had someone either step up or they get someone to fill that number one role.
Yeah, even in that Super Bowl last year against the Eagles, like, the Eagles are such a great team and they found a way to squeak it out. I will say Patrick Mahomes doesn't have the legacy of someone like Tom Brady, but I'm ready to say Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback to ever play football, the best player to ever play football. He's just absolutely insane. The only thing I was worried about this Chiefs team heading into this year was you're relying a lot of your offense on a 34-year-old tight end. Now we've seen Travis Kelce, who's traditionally been healthy, starting to have a couple of injuries. First he hyperextended his knee. I think it was his ankle, right? I don't think I make that up. I think it was his ankle. So he could miss some time, or at least maybe be slowed down a little bit. So that could hurt them. So honestly, if you could have dropped them down below the Chiefs for that, if we really, or behind the Dolphins for that, if we wanted to. But this defense is one of the best units in the league that isn't being talked about. And you got Patrick Mahomes. That is a really good recipe to win games. And if everyone is healthy heading into the playoffs, especially if Travis Kelce is healthy heading into the playoffs, then this is still going to be a team that's going to be able to find a way to grind out wins and be a threat to win the Super Bowl. But the 49ers are going to remain the top dogs. Like, they're like almost in a tier of their own with how they've played so far. Like, they just have not shown any sort of a weakness. Like, it feels like it's just formality to finish all these games. Like, it feels like they're going to be the Super Bowl champion. We just have to go through the formality of playing all these games out. Because every single part of this team has been firing on all cylinders. Brock Purdy has looked amazing. They got so many playmakers. McCaffrey is doing his best to win an MVP. Like, he's been balling. This defense is insane. Like, what is the weakest part of this team?
Dude, I'm not gonna lie to you. I can't pinpoint an exact spot. They are so well-rounded. That's why they're so good. If a section of their team does seem to struggle at all, it flips around and they exploit it, dude. I can't say this enough. Like, let's say if there's 2 plays on the opposing offense that gets good deep balls, you know what they do? You know what Nick Bosa does? He goes, screw your play calling, and he gets a sack, or he gets in the backfield in the quarterback's head. It's like they're so well-rounded. If anything's like goes away or they start to look bad, they snap right back. It is almost astounding. I was worried starting this year, like how Brock Purdy would continue with his last year, but man, he's shaping up to be incredible. Like you said, him and McCaffrey are like putting up some MVP caliber games right now. Purdy more just him not making mistakes, like mental mistakes, and McCaffrey balling out. When you have that recipe, dude, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna lie to you. The more they do better, the more I worry. Because like the whole teams being so good in the early season and they fall short. I want them. I'm not gonna lie to you. I want them to show. This sounds weird. Hear me out. I want them to show some weakness so people start thinking that they've lost it and they come right back towards postseason and then tear through everyone. That's what I think should happen, because if they put themselves on this huge pedestal, they could overthink things, they could overlook people, and that's how they're going to lose. That's the only reason I could see them losing at all late in the year. But if they just continue what they're doing mentally, and it's just one game at a time, one opponent at a time, and just keep winning, they'll win the Super Bowl.
I mean, yeah, it's just Kyle Shanahan is the best coach in the NFL, or maybe, he's 1A, 1B with Andy Reid. I think he's the best. This offense, like in the pick video, I said 20-10 was going to be the score of this game, because, I believe that this defense was going to be insane and hold the Cowboys offense. But I thought the Cowboys defense was going to slow down this 49ers offense, but they just did not. It's just the last couple of years, I don't know if there's been a team that's been like this dominant, this like scary looking. And, they have had, a couple of easier games. Like the Cowboys were their first real test. I mean, they absolutely blew through them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they would really compete against some of these like other like true elite teams that they're eventually going to have to go against a little bit later in the year. But as of right now, just it's not even like, not only do they have no weaknesses, but it's also like everything's just elite. So not only do you not have,
when you're putting up 30 points a week, like week 1 30, week 2 30, week 3 30, week 4 35, and then now 42. Like, and then your defense is holding them 7 points, 23, 12, 16, 10. No one scored over 23 points on this defense, and every game they've scored 30. Like, you can't say anything's bad about this team.
And that's the thing, is like, not only do they not have any chinks in the armor, but also they're like just better. Like, they have somehow the best offense, like, and the best defense. Like, it's so insane what is going on with this 49ers team. I could keep raving on about it. Before the season started, I placed a couple of Super Bowl bets, like teams win the Super Bowl. One of them was the 49ers. I'm glad I placed that bet, because I imagine like their odds are just going to keep getting better and better and better throughout the year. So I'm glad I got it, preseason. But no weaknesses on this roster. I will say my biggest concern, knock on wood, they've also not had any serious injuries. And so, but sometimes, injuries are lucky, and sometimes that's what you get. Like, the Eagles last year stayed really healthy and were able to go on to a Super Bowl run because of that. So as long as their health, keeps up for them. Obviously, the 49ers have had a horrible luck with quarterbacks getting injured and having stuff happen. But, I mean, if everybody stays healthy on this team, then how is anybody going to beat them? I don't see a way in which they lose games. It's absolutely
even if
scary.
they've been doing a lot of like work towards their second string guys. I mean, like, who they just get from the Randy Gregory. I mean, he struggled with the Broncos, but I think he's gonna be a great rotational piece. Like guys like that, to where if there's injuries that do happen, hopefully it's minor injuries. These secondary guys can come in and still do what they do
Randy
best.
Gregory. That was such a good like low risk, high reward sign or like trade, because worst case doesn't do anything for you. Oh well, you still have this insane defensive rotation and pass rush. But if he does come in and does give you the good version of Randy Gregory that we've seen before, then good luck blocking him and Nick Bosa. It's just, this team's insane. Kyle Shanahan's insane. This team's insane. I want them to win it. I want Kyle Shanahan to finally get his ring and the respect he deserves. Christian McCaffrey, for all that he went through in Carolina, like, he deserves it. Brock Purdy's such an amazing story and a great player. Like, I want this team to win the Super Bowl. And they are feeling like a team of destiny. They are feeling like it's their year. I mean, there's been there's the two plays. There's the one where Kittle was doing like the motion across, and they snapped it and bounced off his leg, and it went directly to Christian McCaffrey. And there was the one where Brock Purdy threw the ball, got tipped up in the air, and his receiver caught it. Like, the ball is falling the right way for this team. It's like a team. It's just a team of destiny. Please, for the love of God, can they just stay healthy and win it? Like this is the scariest team I've ever seen through 5 weeks, and there's no reason why they should not win the Super Bowl. But that is going to be all for us today. Please go ahead and drop a comment down below where we're right, where we're wrong. Tell us if we're glazing the 49ers too hard. But overall, just go ahead and leave a like and subscribe if you stuck around for this long. Well, thank you for watching. We'll be back with some more videos for you very, very soon. Thanks, guys.